The year is 2026, the month, March, and the world is holding its breath. The Strait of Hormuz, that tiny, narrow artery that a fifth of the entire planet's energy supply flows through, well, it's just been clamped shut. Global markets are absolutely cratering, oil prices are through the roof, and a really dangerous military standoff is escalating by the hour.
So that brings us to the core question of this whole explainer. How does a nation actually survive when its lifeline to the world is suddenly severed? Because while all these superpowers are posturing and their navies are facing off, one nation, India, finds itself trapped in what you could call a geopolitical perfect storm. It's a crisis not just from the turmoil in the Gulf, but also, at the exact same time, from its most powerful partner, the United States. So how is India playing this seemingly impossible hand? We're about to break it all down, and you're going to want to stay till the end because some shocking things I am going to reveal in this video. Also, if you want to stay on top of the latest global updates, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Now, let's get back to the explainer. To really get a grip on India's predicament, you have to picture it as a nation being squeezed from two opposite directions at the very same time. On one front, you've got an immediate, almost existential economic threat. And on the other, a political firestorm is kicking off, one that's aimed right at the heart of the country's national security establishment. What you're looking at here are basically the two jaws of the vice closing in. Over on the left, you've got this intense political heat coming out of Washington, all driven by a super controversial report that's calling for direct sanctions. And on the right, well, that's the cold, hard reality of economics, a physical blockade in the Strait of Hormuz that is genuinely threatening to bring India's entire economy to its knees. It's a two-front battle, being fought in boardrooms and out on the high seas. Okay, let's zoom in on that political pressure, because the details here are what make this so explosive. For the 7th year in a row, a U.S. government commission has recommended labeling India a country of particular concern. But this year is different. This time, they're naming names. They are calling for targeted sanctions against India's own Foreign Intelligence Agency, RAW, and the RSS, a major nationalist organization. This is a direct challenge, basically proposing to tie American security aid to India's domestic policies. And at the exact same moment, the military coalition over in the Persian Gulf is just crumbling. President Trump is calling on his allies to send their warships to help reopen the strait. But one by one, the usual partners are saying no thanks. The UK's prime minister is worried about being dragged into a bigger war. Germany's chancellor has flatly ruled it out. Even key allies in the Pacific like Australia and Japan have confirmed they're not sending any naval assets. So the US finds itself pretty much alone, and that waterway stays sealed shut. So, you're India. You're caught between an isolated and demanding Washington on one side and a crippling energy blockade on the other. What do you do? Well, there's no panic. Instead, what unfolds is just a masterclass in pragmatic, high-stakes diplomacy. It's a quiet, calculated move that's designed to solve the most urgent problem first. And to understand just how urgent that problem was, you only need to look at this. India is the world's second biggest importer of liquefied petroleum gas. That's the cooking fuel for millions and millions of households. A staggering 90%. Let that sink in. 90% of that supply comes from the Middle East. And all of it has to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. This blockade wasn't just some economic inconvenience, it was a looming national catastrophe. And then, right in the middle of all the gridlock and the rising panic, a breakthrough. Two Indian-flagged tankers, the Shivalik and the Nanda Devi, they just slipped right through the blockade. While ships from other major countries were stuck at anchor, these two sailed through, carrying a lifeline, 92,700 tons of desperately needed LPG. The big question, of course, is how, right? How did they pull this off when nobody else could? Well, the official government statement, which came from Union Minister Jitendra Singh, credited high-level diplomacy, a single decisive phone call from the Prime Minister. Now, behind the scenes, reports are suggesting that a quiet back-channel deal was cut directly with Tehran. Whichever version you believe, the outcome was the same, a pretty stunning diplomatic coup that kept the lights on back home. But look, a diplomatic win on the high seas doesn't instantly calm things down on the streets. This was a relief, for sure, but it wasn't a final resolution. The crisis on the ground in India was still very, very real. We're hearing reports that schools had to cut midday meals because they didn't have cooking gas. And bookings for LPG cylinders just surged as millions of people started to panic buy, fearing a long-term cutoff. And that's exactly why this diplomatic move, as brilliant as it was, could never be the whole story. Because let's be real, you can't base your long-term security on a single phone call. So while one hand was working the diplomatic channels, the other hand was busy building something way more permanent,
a kind of strategic insurance policy right there on land, India's very own dedicated rocket force. This chart, it tells a story of a quiet but incredibly dramatic military buildup. Before 2020, India had just 4 regiments of its homegrown Pinaka rocket system. By the end of this year, that number will have doubled to 8, and by next year, it's projected to hit 10. This isn't just gradual modernization, folks. This is a rapid, almost exponential expansion of deterrent firepower. So what can this system actually do? Well, the Pinaka is what military folks call a saturation weapon. Its job is to completely overwhelm, not just to strike a single target. A single battery, just 6 launchers, can unleash a devastating volley of 72 rockets in only 44 seconds. That's enough to completely blanket an area of almost a full square kilometer. It's designed to deny the enemy any use of that ground, period. And its reach is getting bigger, a lot bigger. Recently, they tested a new, long-range guided version, and it hit its target with precision from 120 kilometers away. Now, that is more than just a number. An extended range like that is a strategic game changer. It fundamentally redraws the map, putting targets that were once considered safe deep behind enemy lines squarely at risk. So the really crucial point here is that this isn't just about collecting more military hardware. This whole buildup is part of a deliberate strategic pivot. India is forging its own dedicated rocket-cum-missile force, and it's systematically replacing its older foreign-made systems with its own indigenous tech. It's a powerful statement about military self-reliance, Atmanir, a hard power insurance policy in an increasingly uncertain neighborhood. So when you step back and you look at all these different pieces on the board, the sanctions threat, the energy blockade, the back-channel diplomacy, and the rapid military buildup, a much bigger picture of our changing world really starts to take shape. What is this series of crises telling us about the new rules of this great game? What we're all witnessing is a world where those old reliable alliances are starting to fray. We're seeing a United States that can no longer just count on automatic support from its traditional partners in Europe and Asia. And right in the middle of all this turbulence, a rising power like India is charting its own path. It's a course defined by a 2-pronged strategy, using nimble, multi-line diplomacy to put out immediate fires, while at the same time building up the hard, self-reliant military power it believes it needs to secure its own future. And all of this leaves us with a really profound question for the era we are now entering. As the old global order continues to splinter, what is actually going to define strength in the 21st century? Is it going to be the subtle art of the deal, that quiet phone call that stops a crisis in its tracks? Or will it be the undeniable argument of a 120-kilometer rocket? India's answer, it seems, is to master both the whisper and the roar.